Thank you. So as Caroline mentioned, I'm Vincent. I'm one of the product manager on JIRA Service Desk, and today I'm going to talk to you about how to scale your JIRA Service Desk with automation. So since this is the last talk of Summit, I'll put tons of cat gifs in it, because everyone likes cat gifs. So does your work feel like this? You're just kind of doing repetitive tasks over and over again, or kind of like this, where you just overloaded with so much work because there's tons of work to do. But as humans, we really like to do exciting and meaningful things. And we build machines to do boring things for us. Like throughout our history, we've built machinery to replace a lot of the boring and repetitive human jobs, and they even do it better than us. And for JIRA Service Desk, we did the same thing. So we built JIRA Service Desk automation engine to let the machine do the boring work so that your agents can do the important things. So the automation engine is very simple. It's basically 3 steps. You have when something happens, if it matches something, then we do some action. And every automation rule contains these 3 things. Now let's zoom into each one to see what each one is. So for when, this is what we call the trigger. It is the action that will trigger a particular automation rule to run. So the trigger can have many different types. So you have issue created, you can have a comment added, different status changing, your SLA time almost close to breaching or being breached. Your linked issue to a JIRA software or JIRA core project is transitioned if you need approval, or if participants and organizations are being added to the issue. And for if, this is the matching part of the automation rule. So the biggest matching is via JQL, which is our JIRA query language. So you can basically match any single field in JIRA. And on top of that, we have also added sort of comments, text match of comments, and also to look into user type as well. Lastly, and the most important thing, is the action. So what can the automation rule do? So it can do a whole heap of things as well. So for example, the automation rule can transition an issue. It can edit all the fields on the service desk issue. So not only just default fields, but also custom fields that you set up. You can add a comment, both internal and external comments. You can alert a certain user, so you can ping a certain user as well. You can send email notifications out. You can auto-approve or decline approvals, and you can even use webhooks to talk to external systems. So now I'm going to step through a few examples, real-world examples, to see how we can use automation rule to actually do what we want to do. So the first example, it's a very simple case. So I have a business team that uses a data center, and then one day suddenly the data center went down. So the business team naturally raised an incident to your IT support team saying, oh, my data center went down. But I have Dave, who is part of my IT team, and he's a data center expert, and I want him to be assigned onto every single data center incident. To do that with automation, it's very simple. So you use when an issue is created. If using JQL, if it matches an incident and the component is data center services and the assignee is empty, then I simply assign Dave to it. So there we have our first automation rule that simply assigns Dave to every single data center service incident that are coming in. And if you have more and more components and different users, you don't have to build out different automation rules for this as well. You can easily just extend it with else if. So here I have, if it's a billing service, I want to assign to Lucy. If it's a payroll service, I want to extend it to Ryan. And you can extend this out to all your components. The next one, we want to step up one level, do a slightly more challenging problem. So this is a very, very common problem, and many of you may face this as well. So I have my first level support in JIRA Service Desk, but sometimes some issues the first level support cannot handle, so they want to escalate it to your second level support. But your second level support team works in JIRA software because they like the planning. They may use Kanban, they may use Scrum. They like to plan out their work. So what the first level support agent wants to do is to create a linked issue to the JIRA software backlog. So when the JIRA software developers, your second level support, picks it up, and when it's done, what we want to do is also transition the issue back onto the linked JIRA Service Desk support ticket and leave a comment for the agent to actually reply to the customer saying, hey, this is done. So to do that, for the when, we use a linked issue is transition. For the if, we use, firstly, the linked issue type matches is caused by, so this is one of the fields you can set when you're linking two different issues. And then we also check that the linked issue status is complete, so when the linked issue is done. And then the action we want to do is to firstly add a comment saying that the development team has resolved this issue. You can set it as an internal comment, or you can even set it as a public-facing comment, so your customer will get the notification as well. And then what we want to do is simply transition the issue when the development solution ready. So it takes over to the next step in your workflow, and then depending how you set up your workflow, some other actions may follow as well. So there we have it. So now for every single second-level support software ticket that are linked to a JIRA Service Desk ticket, when it's done, we get to the JIRA Service Desk ticket will transition itself, and the comments will get added. Next, we want to look at an even more higher-level example. So for those who don't know, a standard change is usually a change process that have been pre-approved. It's a run-of-the-mill changes that we can run time and time again, and it happens all the time. So what we want to do is actually automate the whole change deployment process using automation. So the first step is I have a change request, so I fill out a form to submit a change request. Then the next part usually goes to the approval, but since this is a standard change, this approval process should be auto-approved. Then after this, because it's approved, then I want to run the deployment on our system. So I have a deployment service that will trigger the deployment and deploy our services to whatever we're trying to change. So this is quite a long process. With automation, we can easily complete this by breaking it down to two different automation rules. So the first one is the auto-approve part, and then the second one is the auto-deploy part. So now we split up into two different sections. So firstly, we'll look into the auto-approve side of things. So this looks into the trigger is when approval is required. So when an approval is required, and if the issue matches a standard change, and then we can say the status is waiting for approval, and then also the urgency is low, and then the impact is very minor as well. So only doing this for very small changes, then I just want to auto-approve it. So there we go. We have an auto-approve automation rule. Then we follow up with the next part. So since once the approval is done, we do transition a status to the next one. So I want to trigger when the status actually changed. And then if the issue matches the standard change criteria before it's minor, the impact is low, and then the status went to awaiting implementation, then what I want to do is I want to transition the issue to actually start the process. So on the JIRA side, we can see that this has already been starting to deploy. And then we can use the webhook then action to actually deploy to our deployment services. So the webhook looks kind of like this. So you have your URL where your webhook goes to. You can add static headers, and then you can also include your body, your JIRA ticket into the body of the webhook. And this way, your services will pick up all the information and then do the deployment as planned. And then lastly, I just want to add a comment saying the change deployment has started on the ticket. So now the deployment services will take over the rest of the flow. And if you look into this, by combining both of this, now we have the full standard change flow to deployment completed using automation. So automation is kind of like Lego. They're very small pieces, and they all fit together very well. And it's often very good if you go and actually try and put a bunch of pieces together to see what problem you can solve. But to make it easier, we actually have most of the standard, very common automation rule that we know our customers use day-to-day pre-built. So you can start using that and start building out further from that as well. And you never know, maybe one day we can automate something truly amazing. Anyhow, this is it for the talk. Thank you very much for coming.